If you're thinking about dropping out of school, you need to watch this video. My name is John Guam and I'm a 29-year-old entrepreneur. I've traveled the world, spoken in front of thousands of people, made millions of dollars online, and dropping out of school to me was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It was one of the reasons why I was able to do so much at a young age. And if you're watching this video, you're probably scared, or you've been thinking about dropping out of school, or it's something that you've been considering for a while and you're at a crossroads in your life. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to break down why dropping out of school to me was one of the best decisions of my life, but also why going to school was also a great decision. We're going to talk about whether or not college is a scam, and then I'm going to give you guys some steps on why dropping out of school brought this illusionary pressure to me for me to start to win big. So let's break it down and let's talk about everything in depth. First, why people do go to college. You know, most people, when they go to college, they get pressured by their family, they get pressured by their friends. Maybe, you know, their family are telling them they need to do it in order for them to succeed, or their friends are all doing it, so, you know, they get into group think and they all turn to sheep and want to do the exact same things that their friends are doing. For me, it was kind of just following the rest of the crowd in a way, but most importantly, I come from an immigrant background where my family had told me my entire life that I needed to do something big with my life, and the only way I would be able to do that was in college. There was no other way of doing so. You know, both my parents worked 2 jobs each to put food on the table growing up. We come from an immigrant background where my mom barely had food growing up, and then also my dad didn't have both of his parents, so, you know, they worked really hard to make money in America, and their dream was for me to first go into college. But I had a lot of internal conflict because it was their dream, but it was never really my dream, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to do something important, I wanted to do something fulfilling, but I didn't know if that meant me going to college or if it meant me just taking a year or 2 off to really think about what direction I wanted to take in my life. And what I realized was that obviously most people don't go to school for themselves, but they go because, okay, they could just sleep better at night knowing that they're at least thinking that they're progressing in life. I heard a quote one time that said that formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. And when it comes to school, just because you're going to school, it doesn't mean that you're going to progress. This is the reality that I saw in college, okay? There are distractions everywhere, okay? There's partying, there's drugs, there's girls, there's a lot of things people will do in order to get some sort of social validation, okay? And what a lot of people don't talk about is also the downsides of school. You know, a lot of people will get approved for a $50K school loan than a $50K business loan. These students are taking on millions of dollars in debt, okay? Because it's a debt that can't even be forgiven, and for most likely degrees that aren't even going to be useful in the next 10 to 15 years with AI being involved. And then what I noticed was when I did go to school to network with certain people, depending on the school, few people had direction, but what they did have was connections. So that was the only real benefit from me going to school, because I was able to make the right connections with the right people, okay? But the problem was the environment wasn't the best. Everybody has this social construct or idea of college just being this big party thing. And I went to a party school, so everybody was focused on partying Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Very few people were reading books and really wanting to learn and grow. But one good thing that college did for me was, like I said, give me a good network. It gave me the ability to isolate myself, which helped me find myself more, and it gave me the ability to network with people and read books. I would say that is the only benefit that you can get from college, okay, is the network and obviously the ability to find your true self in order to start executing on whatever it is that you're looking to do. But guys, like when I was, you know, studying trading, when I was studying sales, marketing in college, okay, a lot of times in my dorm rooms, there was a lot of distractions. My roommate would bring some girls into the room, and there'd be like 6, 7 girls here. And sometimes, you know, I had roommates that would do drugs, and I'm talking like hard level drugs. And, you know, I'd try to go do a call or try to go read a book or try to go do something. And I'd have to go into the stairwell of my college in order to get any type of work done because people were just partying in my dorm room. And it was so hard for me to get any serious work done. And the reason I had this mindset was because I wanted to make money young. Most people have the idea of going to college partying for 3 to 4 years than to go work for 40, 50 years. My idea was to work my ass off for 4 to 5 years so that way I could live a life of freedom for the next 50 years. And I wasn't going to do that being distracted, okay, in that school. So this is the truth about college here. And if you're thinking about going to school or dropping out of school, I'm going to tell you guys some facts here that are really important that I think you should actually know. Because if you don't know this, okay, you could be making a big mistake for yourself. But I want to break, okay, the entire idea of needing to go to school in order to be successful. You guys know that 39 million Americans have some college, but no degree. The failure rate or drop-off rate for school ranges anywhere between, the average school, 10 to 30%. What does that mean? Out of 1,000 kids that go to school, less than 30% of them actually graduate. So they go to college, they get this debt, they get the experience, but they don't get anything in return in terms of a degree. Okay, now think of this fact. 41% of college students drop out before even finishing. Average student debt in America as of today is about $40,000 US, with obviously high interest, and only 27% of people people that graduate out of school get a job in their major or in their field. Okay, more than 40% of kids today that are graduating out of school do not have a job as of right now. So many of the statistics are showing here that college is no longer, okay, the way out. College is no longer the path of success. I would like to say that maybe that existed in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. It was necessary. But because of the US feeds us this propaganda that everybody needs to go to school in order to be successful. And the reality is, it isn't. Remember that quote, formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. College doesn't have a direct correlation with how successful somebody is going to be, especially if you're in business. Now, it could mean something if you're, let's say, a nurse, a doctor, you're pursuing a lawyer, pursuing something that requires 100% a degree. But if you're going to school to be an artist, if you're going to school to be a musician, if you're going to school for business, you don't need necessarily a degree in order to win. It might help with the connections, but the risk to reward might not be there for you, okay, if you're in business. College is used as a path to success, but a lot of times it delays it. And that's what you need to be aware of. Okay, guys, the turning point for me was in my sophomore year. I was going to a marketing class. The teacher pulled up a YouTube video and was teaching us based off of a YouTube video and having us just take notes on that. That's when I realized that I was paying $3,000 a year for a class that, okay, I could basically go learn for free on YouTube. I realized the ROI wasn't there. And then I was so scared to tell my parents because I didn't want to be a disappointment. I didn't want to be the person that would be the first in the family to be the person that had the opportunity to go to college, but also didn't do it and didn't graduate because my family had a bunch of mess ups or fuck ups in the past. And I was supposed to be that kid that was the good kid that held all these standards, these expectations, that needed to graduate. I had all this external pressure. And then eventually I ended up dropping out, and my parents were furious with me, man. They didn't believe in a single thing that I was doing with my entrepreneurship. They didn't believe in my business at the time. They didn't believe in anything that I was doing with sales, with marketing. They didn't believe, okay, in trading. They thought I was gonna go to jail. They thought it was a scam. I had my own teachers tell me that I didn't know what I was doing. And I was studying social media marketing back then. I was studying all these different types of books. I was reading, okay, Jim Rohn books. I was reading books, okay, on Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill. I was just investing all this time and energy into myself. And I had this conversation with my parents after, dropping out and moving back home to go help my sick brother. I sat down with my parents, and one day, I'll never forget, I told them, Mom, Dad, this dream is your dream. This idea of me being an architect, being a doctor, a lawyer, you've raised me my entire life with this pressure of doing something big because you guys never had the opportunity to do so. And I love that blessing, but I didn't ask for it. And then I told them, guys, just give me 1 year and I will make this thing work. Okay, I'll pay rent here. I'll do whatever I need to do at 18, 19 years old, but give me 1 year. If you can give me 1 year, I promise you, I will make this thing work. I will make money, okay? And most importantly, I will make you guys proud. promise you, just give me 1 year. And that 1 year, I went from making $2,000 to $4,000 a month to over $30,000 a month. And I ended up moving to Arizona, and getting connected with the right type of people, obviously buying different courses, reading more books, executing correctly, doing the right type of social media marketing, and it changed my entire life. But I had to have that conversation with my parents and add this illusionary pressure. Now, a lot of times people might not have the ability to do so. I was taking out a ton of debt to go into school, and my parents were pressuring me to do this because of grants and obviously all the loans that you get approved for. And I didn't get a scholarship because I wasn't a good kid. I was above average, maybe, if anything. But if you're watching this, obviously, I want you to think about the pros and cons, because I had to sit down with myself and really think about what I would do if I did drop out. I would now be entering the real world as an adult where no excuses could be made. It doesn't matter what happens to you, who screws you over. All that matters was the results. And I realized that early on as I started coming into adulthood, that I couldn't give my parents any type of bullshit excuses. All they cared about was the results. So for me, I did anything I could to study the right information in order to get results out of my business, to get results out of obviously trading, in order to see some success. So what does dropping out mean? Dropping out means it's a commitment. Dropping out doesn't mean quitting. It just means changing paths and changing directions. You have to replace the classroom with relentless, an obsessive amount of self-education, discipline, and accountability that 90% of people aren't going to take, because most people quit, after they leave the classroom. So what should you do before you drop out of school? You should probably go talk to people that have done it, so that way you can get some proof of concept in whatever business you're looking to build or industry you're looking to obviously get into. Find a mentor, find somebody that has gone through the path that you've had, and most importantly, try to model that mentor, ask the right questions, so that way you can get the exact same results. The second thing is build skills as quickly as possible. In college, it's built for you to eventually become a worker, so that way you can eventually for you to build skills, so that way you can get paid off those skills at work. What you have to do is you have to apply that illusionary pressure to yourself and build those skills. My advice, the next thing would be have a 6 to 12 month runaway. Have some sort of savings, have something that you can fall back on if you're building something outside of school. For me, I didn't really have savings, but what I did have was a credit card at the time, because I understood how to leverage the power of credit. I had a credit card with a $15,000 limit. That $15,000 limit saved my life so many times when I almost went broke building my business. And that credit card right there saved me, and it helped me make obviously millions of dollars in the long term, but it was just because I had the right information and I studied how credit works. Now, it just depends on, obviously it's money you have to pay back, your risk tolerance. So make sure you make smart risk tolerance and understand your risk. But the last message I'll give to you guys here is you have to keep learning and just be different. If you're dropping out of school, it could be one of the best decisions of your life or one of the worst decisions of your life, but it's all dependent on what you do after. How you take on learning in the long term, not just in after you drop out, but in the long term of life. You could tell the difference between people that learn for just a couple years after they drop out of school, once they stop learning, after they leave school, or the people that decide to take learning as a lifelong commitment. They're always reading books, always trying to learn from different mentors and coaches. I've made it a lifelong commitment to constantly be growing, because if you're not growing in today's society, you're obviously always dying. I want to say this, dropping out doesn't guarantee success, but for me, it was a accountability check. College didn't teach me how to build. It taught me what I just didn't want. Your value isn't in correlation to the validation that you need from other people. All you want to focus on is what your dream is and what you're looking to do. So if you're questioning college right now, and if you're questioning whether or not you should drop out, just think about some of the things that I said to you here. And just from my experience, it was one of the best and also worst decisions that I got into in my life. And I'm giving you guys some points here so that way you can go out there and do the right thing when it comes to your life. Okay, before you drop out of college, just make sure that you've enrolled into yourself a lifelong commitment of change. And I'll talk to you guys soon.